I want to touch on one more point, which I wanted to see how far you're from. One of the big benefits, or at least one of the features that I see your team moving or building into the ecosystem, is making it open for partnerships. So I think it was Siggy, one of your community heads, he actually listed out a lot of the in-game economies and partnerships and sort of small ventures that were launched in the ecosystem, which I thought was remarkable. There was more than 20 of them. And these were providing advisory services, these were mining services, these were all sorts of services that kind of remind me of World of Warcraft back in the day when you could go to China and buy 1 million gold. And these were kind of mini economies that were happening. But let's talk about larger partnerships, right? Partnerships where you work with other game developers or other brands and IPs. How far are you away from that right now? Are you in discussion with any of these names? Are they taking an interest in the economy? Do they want to tap in, especially if you have a cult-like following? That's a network that could jumpstart any business if they worked with you.
Yeah, just to clarify, so Siggy, he's not on our team, and this is a great example of the type of maniacal fan base that we have. I mean, this guy, I'm very active in our Discord, by the way. I'm always communicating and conversing with our community and very open with sharing development progress, things that are going on. But I think it's phenomenal that we have people that are just so passionate that they're willing to go capture all of this information, summarize it, and publish it on Twitter. And Siggy's out there recording videos, demos of himself, and really a great contributor to our ecosystem. But this partially goes back to your earlier question, which I didn't really fully answer, which is it too ambitious? Well, first of all, I don't really believe in being too ambitious. We set a big vision for a reason, but I do sincerely believe that we can accomplish it. And part of that is what you're describing right now. And by the way, also speaks to why we're building on-chain game logic, which leads to this idea of composability or extensibility. Maybe more simply put, it's kind of like enabling a platform where people can mod, or they can build their own extensions of our game, or they can use our game assets in some other version of Star Atlas. But we are a very permissible ecosystem. In fact, permissionless, as we would like to say, wherein we have a build program, build.staratlas.com. There's 2 components. We've published 13 of our repositories, program IDs, IDLs, APIs, documentation, as well as TypeScript binding, so people understand what our program's functions are, and they can create their own programs that integrate seamlessly with those. And we're already seeing that happen. There's a number of teams that have built tools that allow people to interact with our gaming ecosystem, add convenience or add some fun to it, or otherwise optimize operations. We're not building this tech. These other teams are building this tech, and they're making it available. Now, right now, most of those teams that are building developer tools, they're not monetizing it. But I am perfectly okay if they decide, hey, our feature makes you 20% more efficient in game, and we're going to take a 2% fee on every one of the transactions because we've delivered this tool. The other side of the build program is our open IP policy. Now, you do have to go through an application process, but effectively what that says is the first $1 million in revenue on any business that's approved pays 0 royalty or revenue fees into Automata. Now, beyond the first $1 million, it's still pretty favorable. It's only 3% up to 10% of gross income, and that depends on what industry segment they're operating in. We've had 66 companies apply to our open IP policy just since March of last year. We've approved a number of those, but it's everything across the board. You'd be surprised. I mean, one of the most surprising ones to me is a coffee brand that's called Dark Core Roasters that's themed as Star Atlas. But how cool is that? We have Star Atlas coffee out there effectively because this company spun up.
This is a store, or is it's actual coffee beans, or is it virtual coffee? This is an actual coffee bean that people are.
Everything I'm about to describe is physical world. It's all fully online brand, but yes, It's packaged whole beans of coffee. And they have a couple of different themes and roasts and what have you. But we have teams that are building out or selling 3D printed models of all of our ships, teams that are selling Star Atlas apparel and merchandise and swag, computer peripherals. There's a company that's producing jewelry, Star Atlas themed jewelry. And the list really does go on. And this is part of how we build this full ambitious vision of Star Atlas is we, first of all, enable and empower developers to co-create alongside us. And I see this as very synergistic. In a way, yes, it's kind of us giving up future revenue potential if we let someone else build it. but
Or
we
you can
have
think of
so
it as
much to
marketing
build.
dollars, right? Yeah. You can think of it as marketing bartering.
Yeah, I mean, it's marketing that we don't have to pay for because other
Yeah.
teams, all we're really giving up is future revenue potential on using that coffee brand, for example. When would we ever have the chance to build a Star Atlas coffee brand? It would be a decade before we got to that. Let somebody build it now and sell it now. We still have revenue potential off of that, but we're giving them a chance. And to your point, this is exposure for us. We're getting the Star Atlas name out to people all over the world as a result of this. And that's going to help us grow our user base. The person who's creating the product, that entrepreneur, has a chance to make some money. And in the case of the technology development, our users get access to all of these new features that we haven't had time to build yet. And now their gaming experience is better. So our users are happier because of this. So this is the model. This is the paradigm that allows us to accomplish this massive vision. It's not all relying on us. It's relying on a global collective of innovators to build alongside us and bring this thing fully to life.
I mean, these are all still small businesses, though, right? These are small entrepreneurial businesses trying to operate in, I'm thinking more bigger names, right? It's not quite the same. You recently partnered with Metagravity to expand the world and to allow as many players to operate in an open world space as possible. And I think that test was done recently. Well, first of all, how did that go? And number two is, are there other partnerships like this that are cooking?
I can't yet comment on any of the discussions that we have ongoing with mainstream brands, and I will just throw out some arbitrary names. But we do see big potential for companies like Nike, for example, to create a presence in Star Atlas. And this actually kind of goes hand in hand with the Metagravity implementation, but our central space stations are intended to be these vibrant, high-density social hubs with tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of players all running around. We sell commercial land, we sell residential land. People are buying homes in the metaverse. Right now, they're buying this land. And so I certainly see an opportunity for major companies to come in, buy some commercial land. They could set up a storefront. That could be one avenue, or otherwise purchase advertising from us where there might be billboards that have a Samsung logo on it or something to that effect. So we've certainly thought through that, and we do have some conversations ongoing, but at the same time, our central space station itself is still very early stage development. So we're not quite there yet to be able to accomplish that. Sandbox, by the way, has done a great job with this. Completely different genre, completely different game, but man, they've got a lot of major companies that are effectively marketing themselves through the Sandbox.
HSBC has a plot of land in Sandbox. There's several Hong Kong developers here that bought land in Sandbox 2 years ago, including, I think it was New World and Sun Hung Kai. They all bought in, they repackaged it, and they sold some of it out, and the model kind of worked. It was fun. But yeah, clearly Animoca and Sandbox are a good model to follow. The way they were, I think just digging a bit deeper, they were able to provide a format that shows clearly how advertising and brand building can exist. I would imagine that model or that system with your stations or the space stations needs to be tuned a bit so that you can show very clearly how they can get maximum exposure for your communities.
That's right. I love Sebastian, by the way. He's the CEO of Sandbox. And again, I really love what they've done there. Our vision is just very different. That's a voxel-based, very blocky, almost Minecraft-like universe, which is cool. And again, they've had a number of major successes. Ours is this hyper-realistic, super immersive 3D world in Unreal Engine 5. It just takes longer for us to get our assets created and refined before we can go to market. And we are focused on things like a racing gameplay loop so that we can get people in to play the racing game while we continue building everything else. But once we get our space stations online, these are, especially with any type of VR activation in the game, I can already imagine myself walking around a central space station, doing my shopping. I actually think it's a disruptor for Amazon. Like, I would go and do my shopping inside Star Atlas. I'll just throw one more wacky idea out, but I even think things like grocery delivery or a DoorDash, for example. What if you pop into a Pizza Hut or a grocery store in-game, you put your list of items together, you purchase those with the in-game currency, and then it just gets delivered to your house. Like, I don't think these things are outside of the realm of possibility. It's just a matter of time.
You hit on a question I was going to ask later on. VR, AR, I saw a demo that one of your community members did in applying VR using the Oculus headset to implement into it. A gamer myself, this is something that I think is almost, it's so natural to see that happen, especially it removes a lot of the friction with not just the keyboard mouse aspect, but the whole first person angle. I'm getting a little bit nerdy here, but how is the team committed to moving into the VR space? Because I feel like it's a lost opportunity if you didn't, if you're building an open world. Apple is releasing their Apple Vision. Pre-sales are off the shelf. It sounds like by the time that we get something going over the next 6 to 9 months, even a year, I would imagine it's almost a foregone conclusion that you would have to build it natively in this space. And is that a possibility? I guess I'm asking for your team to consider.
Yes. And to be clear, everything that we're building right now is not VR native. We are building a traditional game in Unreal Engine. But the video that you're referring to was most likely this plugin that is now available for Unreal Engine. And by the way, working like our selection of Unreal Engine was one of the best decisions we've ever made, because it is just constantly progressing with technology, and people are always building things like Worldscape and World Partition and VR plugins. And I can't remember the name of the VR plugin. I'm actually not very much on top of the game development, because that's where my co-founders come in and their expertise comes in. But in any event, it's a plugin that effectively, it's a little buggy, but effectively makes VR immediately accessible in your game. And one of our devs was just toying around with it because it was available. So we're building right now for more of the traditional 3D world using Unreal Engine, but I do believe that, in 3 years, 4 years, 5 years time, maybe even sooner than that, but as we near completion of the game itself, these VR tools and plugins are going to be immediately available. And then it's just a flip of a switch. Do we activate the VR mode if you want it, and you can turn it on? So I think it's very promising, but it's historically, you would have had to go through a major refactor to make a gaming product VR enabled. And as you noted, we already have an ambitious vision. So first step is to get the core product out. But as I said, with plugins like this one, maybe it's going to be available a lot sooner than we anticipated.
So what's next on the docket now? You've kind of done a great showcase of several of the verticals. Is the team going to focus on any one particular, or what's the schedule looking like for the next quarter in terms of rollout plans? I mean, I know some of it is public, some of it is alpha. Yeah, maybe you can tell us what you can.
One of the things that might not be very exciting for this audience, but something we're rolling out very soon here, is what we call the DAC platform, DAC, Decentralized Autonomous Corporations. That's really just our terminology for guilds, so these collectives of players. But in Star Atlas fashion, we've built our guild registration platform to execute fully on-chain as well, and things like member management, permission setting, treasury management of these guilds, as well as just registration and promotion to recruit other players. This is coming online imminently.
And that's interesting, because when you mention guild, the first thing that comes to mind are lending organizations and financing organizations that help asset management in a way. So just as a recap for some of our audience, what these guilds associations would do is they would buy up NFT assets and then lease them out to players at a lower cost of ownership in order for them to work with the asset and generate yield. And they would share those earnings with the guild as a populace. And then they would support the community that way. So in this case, you're kind of facilitating that integration of gaming guilds and finance or asset management companies into the ecosystem. Is that right? Am I getting it right?
You did. You nailed it. It's like having a corporate treasury with multi-sig permissions on who can management, but you make a great point and a great example with asset lending. Let's say a guild treasury has collected 1,000 ships and maybe they can't utilize all of them. They recruit players now to come in and use those ships, produce income with a revenue share directly back to the treasury. Now the player gets to keep some and the guild gets to keep some. But what's really powerful about that is it effectively creates a free-to-play mechanic. Now new players don't actually need to buy assets before they can play. They can join a guild and use those assets. There is actually a team as well, external to ours, that is building out a fleet rental and scholarship system, which was extremely successful with Axie Infinity. And so whether you're in a guild or not, they're building a platform that would allow you to borrow a ship or borrow a fleet and then use that in the game. And again, it can be executed in a number of ways. It could be a flat fee, it could be a time-based fee, or it could be a revenue sharing model.
For myself, I'm interested on the other side. I bought a couple of ships during the dip, which is great, but I don't have time to play the game all the time. I'm more fascinated about the economy and about the system that you built. I think having a platform where I could lend my assets out and then have a revenue share, give a cut to the arranger, and then have the player generate or do most of the work and have their fun, I think that's a great win-win situation. And I might tap your email later to to find out what the organization is all about.
Yeah, I mean, I think you had made a comment about real estate earlier in our discussion here, and I genuinely think of this rental model or scholarship model as being very comparable to the way that real estate works. And I think in terms of capital allocation, people that, the whales in the ecosystem will actually see a big opportunity here, especially to the extent that there is demand for the assets from new players. But it intrinsically solves a lot of problems for us. One, you get large wallet holders buying portfolios of assets with the intention of renting them out or leasing them out. We create free to play for new users, and we also provide an opportunity for those new users to generate earnings that they can reinvest into themselves over time to build up their own fleet and continue playing. So I'm very excited about that. Now, that is an external development, but it's possible because we've built the game logic on chain. So now, through various permission systems and a profile primitive that we've developed, people are leveraging that to build their own technology and build their own business around it, which happens to be a lending business. It's all about cash flows, right? It's all about cash flows, and that's very much what real estate is about. There is a lot more. I gave you kind of just the one piece there on the DAC. I'll go kind of quickly, but this is going to be an incredible year for us. We have a ton that we've been working on and that is coming out very soon. But on the browser-based product, two big updates is Starbase construction. This is a new economic and gameplay modality. So all of the resources that players are collecting, right now, all of the Starbases are already available on the map. But in the next iteration, players will be responsible for upgrading and constructing starbases, bringing them into existence. And then shortly after that, we'll be adding combat systems, so starbases can be destroyed, territory can be captured, and we end up with this very dynamic, persistent PvP world, which we're all internally super excited about, because that's where it becomes less about just individual gameplay and it becomes a real MMO RTS.
Yep, that's where the real loop comes in. I was an early World of Warcraft player, and what really kept me in that universe was actually the PvP. And even League of Legends, I started in the beta, and I'm still kind of a player now on occasion now because of the gameplay loop. So competition is definitely a great token, a utility and sink for the economy. So yeah, I'm very excited about it. Anything else?
Yeah, well, we do have a mobile app, by the way, that's in development.
Wow.
We're releasing this year. This is a fitness trainer. Okay. It's kind of a spin on this move to earn segment where you go on a walk, run, or bicycle ride. In our case, you're not earning, you're actually leveling up a character. So you can kind of imagine yourself, you're leveling up your character while you play. You want to go out on a run, pull that character into your phone, go on the run, and keep leveling up your character. So you're never really leaving the Star Atlas universe, even in the physical world. And this speaks to the assets in Sage. They can be used in Unreal Engine. Your character that's on your mobile device can be used in Sage or in Unreal Engine. So everything is all interwoven.
And how's it work? Are you using physical kind of like Apple Watches and Fitbits in order to track that? And then the second question of all, of course, is how do you deal with bad actors? People who just, like, I might just take my phone, attach it to my dog, and have him run around the park for an hour and log it in.
Some of that can't really be prevented. We're aware of that. Even people there's a pretty famous picture of somebody that looks like they're from a developing country and they have like 100 mobile phones on the front of their bike and they're riding around. So things like this, exploits are going to be possible. We could get more restrictive and require things like you need heart rate tracker or you need something that's measuring your biometrics. But right now, the plan is we want more people to get into the Star Atlas universe, and we're not paying out anything for this. You're just leveling up a character. So in a way, if people are using this exploit, they're really just diluting the character market, which is not great for the economy. But their avenue to monetization would be to, say, level up a character to the maximum level and then sell that to someone else who just wants the highest level character, right? But as a first step, we want to get Star Atlas into the hands of everyone that has a mobile device that wants to get engaged in our economy, and this is a way for us to accomplish that. And then the last thing is our Unreal Engine product line. We'll have what is arguably the biggest release we've ever done later this year. And this is the full integration of Metagravity. So Metagravity is this server infrastructure. It's user concurrency scaling. And this is how we get worlds with high density of players in a single instance. This has really never been done before. Most games, by the way, you might have a 128 player limit. That's on something like Fortnite. Sometimes you can get up to 256 characters. We've already demonstrated internally 30,000 players in a single lobby. This is network connected bots, so not real live players. And then what we just recently had was a 1,000 player stress test of our world using this Metagravity tech. But it's the racing gameplay loops, it's the third person shooter, it's ship configuration, ship mastery, character progression, XP systems. It'll start to feel like a real MMO with the full multiplayer support and authoritative server support. That's coming later this year. And at that point, we go full public access on Epic Game Store. Right now, we're private access. It's easy to get a game key, but just given the early stage, it's private access. Yeah, so the idea is we go full public access with that release, and that's coming later this year.
For myself, when I looked at the Metagravity experiment, I was immediately brought back to, again, we're talking about World of Warcraft days. The first day World of Warcraft came out, I remember walking from Stormwind to Ironforge with my character. Again, I'm nerding out here, but anyone of our age will remember this experience, going from one site to Ironforge and seeing over 100 characters in the same space jumping around. That, to me, was an epiphany, a mind-blowing event, which had never been done before. I feel like this Metagravity experiment is in a similar vein, especially when you think about network effect, about traffic. If I were to explain this to a brand or an advertiser, it's really to show them up front what is truly possible. If you had 1,000 players running concurrently or 30,000 people in a crowded space concurrently, it's no different from having a mall or a Times Square or whatever the case may be, interacting with each other on a commercial level.
Exactly. I would have used the exact same example of a mall. The reason why businesses get a storefront in a mall is because they know there's going to be foot traffic there. And so in our case, we want this expansive open world where, regardless of where you are across this universe, actions and reactions that are taken throughout the game are effectively reflected and replicated for every single player. But in particular, those social hubs, those central space stations of each of the three factions, that's where we expect high density of players. And yes, if you're a brand and you want exposure to this large player base, that's where you want to have set up your storefront or set up your advertising, because there could be 100,000 or 150,000 players running around there.
I got one more question as a CEO, from a founder to founder, looking at cost base and looking at, we touched on using software as a service, outsourcing a lot of the work, bringing technologies such as Unreal Engine 5 into the core development process. I'm seeing a lot of real progress being made in a couple of fields. One is in rendering, and then the second is in AI. You mentioned a very good point earlier about how Starfield, they started 10 years ago, which in itself was so ambitious because they started at such an early stage. The fact that you're working with Unreal Engine 5, UE5 now, reduces the barrier of entry. Well, of course, not just for yourself, but for the entire market. But are there any other technologies that you're excited about that could help you accelerate the dev cycle, that could reduce the launch period from what normally is, say, 7 years or 5 years to potentially even shorter, 2 year or less?
It is hard to say. The one tech that you referenced is AI that I think could contribute to that. Before touching on AI, you also talked about rendering. This is often referred to, or I assume what you're referring to is pixel streaming. So this is like rendering all of the graphics in the cloud and then streaming that to someone's PC. That isn't necessarily going to contribute to development efficiency, but that does contribute significantly to accessibility. As I said earlier, this Star Atlas, the MMO, requires a pretty high-end gaming PC to have good performance and good quality settings. But if all of that GPU work could be done in the cloud, it could be streamed to someone's mobile. And now, once again, anybody with a mobile phone can get involved in Star Atlas. That's still a ways off, but we are working with the team right now on that pixel streaming technology. And so we'll see where that goes. I think AI probably has the biggest potential to reduce development times on games. Everything from the coding itself, developers can use GPT and LLM models to produce code faster. The art production pipeline, which is a bit of a controversial topic. I know some people are kind of against using AI for art production. I think even some, I don't know that any of our artists are, but I think artists in general, they're looking at this like, oh, it's replacing my job. But ultimately, you need the artist to drive the direction of the AI art creation. So if it's not the artist hand painting it or hand drawing it, it's actually the artist giving the direction to the computer to create it. 3D modeling. Yeah. I think those are the areas where we'll see development efficiency. And then I'm very excited about AI agents in games, lifelike conversations.
NPCs?
With non-playable characters, yes. I think that's going to be very cool.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty excited about AI NPCs. They're given rules and set dynamic personalities, a database of information, but they can communicate in natural language and in a very sophisticated manner, potentially even grow and develop over the life cycle of the game. I think that's pretty cool. Or AI shopkeepers, as you say, so you can put in a Nike store. In that Nike store, you have a Nike AI that helps you pick and choose the type of metaverse sneakers that you'd want to buy that day. Maybe we can give a shout out to Artifact and Nike. Maybe they can come in, have a chat with us.
We've done some work with Artifact, by the way, and I love those guys. Yeah, we have some apparel in our game that was crafted by Artifact. This actually goes all the way back to 2021, but those guys are doing some great stuff.
Yeah, agree. Well, look, I don't want to take up any more time. I think we've kind of killed the last hour and a half. But yeah, what else is up? How are you doing individually as a person? How's family? How are you holding up, Michael? It's been a while. I mean, you gained some weight. I saw you at Breakpoint. I was like, man, Michael's kind of gotten a bit pudgy since I last saw him. What's going on over there?
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate that as a way to close out. No, I, as a company and then me personally, went through some pretty dark days over the last year and a half, upwards of 2 years. I think a lot of stress, and I do not have the give up mentality. It's always all been about perseverance and determination. And so I put every part of myself into making sure we could get through those hardest times that we faced. Things have certainly turned around over the last 4 months to 6 months. And so mentally feeling much better, much healthier than I have. And next time you see me, I will be back in my usual shape because I've gotten back on the bicycle, gotten back into lifting. I've been putting down about 100 miles a week on the bike again. So feeling good. Yeah, for a while there, it felt like I couldn't step away from my computer because I needed to put everything into making sure the company survived. And so feeling a huge weight lifted off my shoulders now and very excited for the future again.
On that note, big congratulations to you and the team. I think you've done a fantastic job. You stuck to a philosophy that's very, very hard to maintain in such a volatile environment. But I think it sounds like you guys are on the right path, and I'm really looking forward to see what you guys bring to the market over the next couple of years. If it means anything, it would be great to have you out here in Hong Kong at some point and share the mission and the message. And hopefully we'll see you again soon.
That sounds great. I knew it was going to be a great conversation, Alvin. I really appreciate you having me on. And I do have plans to be traveling the world again this year. Dubai, Singapore, Southeast Asia, Istanbul, Brazil. So I'll get in touch with you when I'm in your neck of the woods.
Definitely. Are you going to be in Dubai in April? Yeah, for Token 2049?
Mm-hmm. That is the plan.
You're going to be there? Yeah, that's the one.
Yeah.
Okay, I might see you there. I'm planning a trip with some guys over there of some other or more hedge fund type of work to do. But yeah, I'll probably catch up with you then. We'll grab a meal. Yeah.
That sounds great.
Anything else? Yeah. All right. Well, thanks a lot, man. It's good to see you. Be well.
Yeah.
Don't be a stranger. I'll ping you every once in a while. And yeah, take care, big guy.
Sounds good, man. Yeah, I appreciate it. Look forward to chatting with you soon, man.
Yeah, we'll do. Have a good one. Take care. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye.